Pisces, welcome to your weekly Sidereal Astrology forecast. This is going to be for the 9th through the 15th of November. My name is Athen, and this is for Sidereal Astrology, so if you're new to this type of astrology, do check the description down below. All right, Pisces, so we have a lot of easy aspects this week within the context of the fact that a lot of these slow-moving planets did go into unfriendly areas last week, which I talked about in the daily weekly that I did, but a lot of easy aspects. So I think it'll be easier to, find that middle path, find that balance. In fact, that's how it was last week, probably quite easy in a general sense as well. So the key though, and of course it depends on your own personal birth charts and experiences, the key is that with the sextiles, they're openings. So they're not a given. They're just gateways, and we can choose to walk through them. We can choose to put energy into them, and that's really in our court with sextiles. So the areas that are being activated are your 8th house, which is where we're going to have a new moon on Wednesday, and leading into it, Mercury going into that 8th house on Monday, setting the stage for it. So it's all about new beginnings now, relating to what's really meaningful to you. This is the house of truth. It's the house of what's hidden, the house of the depth, and this is the depth with you. So it's all about healing and transformation. And with the new moon, it's feeling it. It's a very receptive energy. So it's always a receptive time during the new moon. And here, especially in a water house, it's important to have that sort of connotation to it, and to do that introspection and maybe that alone time or whatever that is so needed during these watery energies. Now it's not like the 12th, but it's the 8th, so it could be in your inner relationships, could be quite powerful in your inner relationships. So having that observation, having that awareness, and that truth that is so important with ourselves and with our relationships is what the 8th house really signifies. So it's a great week to reflect on that, to plant new seeds around that, to ask yourself what it is that's really meaningful to you, so that over the next 2 weeks and the next 6 months of the solar cycle, you can put energy into those 8th house things, having those deeper connections or whatever it might be. So that's going to be the focal point of the week. And like I said, Monday, Mercury leads into it. Mercury is actually very well placed in Libra, your 8th house. So I think naturally you'll be thinking maybe more about these deeper things, and that'll be segueing into that new moon. So it could be communicative about the truth and what have you. And I think just naturally maybe journaling or communicating and thinking about it is a great way of working with it. So that's the middle beginning part of the week there. And then Thursday, we've got Mars going over the North Node in your 7th. So there's been a lot of activity involving your one-on-one connections. This is all kinds of one-on-one connections. It could be your spouse, it could be friends, it could be family members, whatever it might be, coworkers. Could even be clients if you're into like business or sales, something like that, legal matters. These are basically anything that's interrelated in a relationship. So you've got the drive, you've got the energy and the motivation with Mars in that 7th. You could even be enjoying those connections as well with Venus. But now Mars goes over the North Node. So very significant. This happens only once every 2.5 years roughly. The North Node's been in your 7th house for the past 2 years. Okay, so there's been this backdrop in this energy these past 2 years for you to put focus and put attention into forming relationships, new ones, existing ones, that kind of thing. So now with Mars, it can help you set those intentions, can help you put in that energy, that self-assertiveness that is so important, help you express your values since Mars rules that 2nd house of yours, help you express, maybe even your philosophy, your outlook on life, etc. But in either case, all of that stuff could be changing this week, your values, your outlook, things like that, and particularly your relationships, as I'm sure they probably have been over the past couple years. So that's going to be very important, as well as on Friday, we do have Venus sextiling up to Saturn. So it's kind of like this icing on the cake. Very good for, I would say, your communications this week and that depth. I think naturally it's easy to work with. Venus ruling that 8th house, sextiled up from Saturn, is this discipline, this maturity in your one-on-one connections, as well as in what's really meaningful, what's really true in life. And your communications could be quite solid and quite grounded, and your mind as well too. So that's going to be later on Friday around the weekend, and quite supportive there for those one-on-one connections, as they kind of have been with these easy aspects from this particular area. So that's going to be the end of the week, and that's all the major aspects. The high points, the focal point being this new moon and Mercury in the 8th house, depth, truth, honesty, transparency, healing, shared resources, on a more mundane level, releasing yourself from unhealthy attachments, unhealthy bondages. And it sounds like they're very deep things, but it's all about our perspective. When we're open to, having the freedom, 8th house isn't often talked about, but it's very freeing. When we have that healing, we have that rejuvenation in the process, then that's a fantastic way of working with it. And it's always a certain time period of it. And so for now, this week and this whole, month really for you Pisceans is the time to connect on that deeper level, to do that more 8th house thing. And that's going to be setting the stage both for the short and the long term, avenue for you, and especially in the year, because that's involving the sun. So that's going to be that. Sextiles, though, making it quite easy to work with, and the sextiles from these two particular areas. You've had Pluto in your 10th house over the past many years, helping you connect to your work in a deep way, and so I think naturally there's good positive support for your career, for long-term goals, anything in the future, anything you might consider your legacy or what you're leaving behind in this life. Very powerful, very deep, and bringing that into both the 8th house and vice versa, the 8th house, the depth into the career this week. Now, Jupiter's been in your 6th, so there's been expansion. There's been opportunities to maybe connect to your health, your diet, your routine, your work environment, the daily activities, and so good energy there also going into the 8th. So how to maybe transform and heal, and all that being a sort of self-improvement kind of energy, which you're learning quite a bit about, or can be, with Jupiter in that 6th house of yours. All right, Pisces, so have a great week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Take care.